Excellent. Well, we'll hop in. It's so great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Sure. Thank you.
You bet. So, I want to begin our journey with this. It's a question that I always begin with. 5, 6 years ago, this pandemic was raging, changing everything. How did you get through the coronavirus era, and how has it changed the way that you approach life and work today?
That is a really interesting question. So, I have two kids,
Yeah.
and a husband. And I remember when my husband said, I'm going to be working from home for a while. And I thought, there is such a thing as too much togetherness. I'm not sure how this is going to go, kind of joking, kind of not.
Yeah.
It ended up being fine. His office and my office are completely separate from each other.
Yeah.
But trying to navigate things with the kids, I was fortunate that my kids were old enough that they could get themselves on Zoom. Right? It wasn't something where I had to sit there and keep them on the Zoom call, that kind of thing. But both my kids have ADHD, so my son, he was really struggling with the online
Yeah.
stuff, just in general. He always has. Um, and it was hard for me because I am an extroverted introvert. So, like, I love being around people and I have so much bandwidth for it. Right.
Uh-huh.
But I was really getting antsy in the house and everything else. I was going for lots of walks and all of that. My husband was high risk. So we had to be really careful for a while. So my kids did all virtual school for the first bit when we came back. Um, but then when we realized, especially with my son, he just did not learn that way.
Yeah.
He went back, but we just had to take a lot of precautions. So it was scary because we just didn't know what we were dealing with.
Yeah.
And it was, having all of my worlds converge into one for an extended period was challenging. And that's actually when I got my diagnosis. My ADHD diagnosis was, I was just drowning in everything. And one of my friends, I kind of half jokingly said something about, yeah, I think I might have ADHD. And she's like, actually, I think you do. And I think it's why you struggle so much. And so I had to do it through an online thing because they weren't seeing anybody yet, whatever.
Mhm.
But that's how I got my diagnosis.
Yeah.
And that changed everything. That was amazing. But it was still really challenging trying to figure out how my brain worked and navigate this whole new world that I just realized I was a part of, and manage my kids and
Yeah.
manage my house, and we can't go anywhere. And, so it was a really, it was a scary time. We used to joke how we'd always say, oh, if I had more time, I would do this. And then we're like, okay, turns out that wasn't actually the problem. It
Yeah.
was just didn't
Right.
want to do it.
Yeah.
Um, but we were really fortunate. We took the time to have like family lunches, which we didn't have because the kids were in school and things like
Yeah.
that. So, it was good in some ways, but scary in others. And I'm glad that we've, kind of come out the other side of it, or as much as I think we are going to. And
Yeah.
so we'll see.
Yeah. My son's on the spectrum. He's 20, so I'm very used to the ADHD kind of that world and understand it. And like you said, being introvert, extrovert, he's social. He loves being around people, but he has this cup that it'll just get full and it's like I gotta, and I'm like, all right. Like it took a while in his life for me to get to that point where it was like, well, let's just, we can make it through for a little bit, but anymore, it's like when you hit that point, it's not like you're making a choice because you want to go or there's something that's small about it. It's an actual diagnosable issue that needs to be recognized because it can turn into an issue if things spin too hard.
Yeah, I actually saw. I have to verify this still, but I saw on a reel where they said that they did a study and they found that introverts have like 2 hours and 37 minutes before they go into like burnout mode socially.
Uh-huh.
And so they're like, so to navigate that, maybe show up to a party 20 minutes late,
Yeah.
right? When you hit the 2 hour mark, say, okay, time to go now, kind of thing. Cause otherwise you're like reeling for days.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, that is about right.
Yeah.
That's about as much as I can do.
Uh-huh.
And so, and it's really good that your son knows, like,
Yeah.
this is my limit.
That's
And
it.
he's able to articulate it because some people are afraid to say something, worry
Yep.
about what people will think, that kind of things. Although with my son's ADHD, so he's got that too. They don't really care about that too much. But um But my son's the same way. He's very like, I am not into this right now, and I want to leave. And there are times where, unfortunately, he has to stay for whatever reason. But I always want to respect the fact that they're telling me what they need and trying to work with that, as
Yep.
opposed to just being like, no, sorry, deal with it, because
Right.
it just doesn't always work for those brains.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. But it's weird how it manifests too, because he can go to like a sporting event. Like he's been weaned on going to sports and he's fine. But like I'm a visual artist and I had an art show a couple years ago, and it was kind of, the art shows where there's music and there's mingling and there's glasses tinkling and all this. And I could just see it in his eyes, and I just saw him across the room, and I was like, "Oh, how are you doing?" No. And I said, "Well, go back and get the food. You got to go eat the food first." He goes
Yeah.
back, he's just jamming all the food in his mouth. And then I went back and I'm like, "Are you still okay?" "No, I'm not." I'm like, "Let's go." So he at least got a little bit of the accoutrements of it and got to be in it.
Yeah.
But it's weird how those things can manifest, because it's like COVID. Like some people got it, other people didn't. It's like when you look at something that's biological or psychological, there's no template. It's totally
Yeah.
a wishy-washy thing, you know?
Yeah. And same with, so for example, my daughter is very social and she loves to go out to eat and things like that. And my son does not like to go out to eat at all. He just would just no.
Yeah.
If it's just like him and one of us, like me or like his dad, and it's a restaurant that's on a quieter side,
Uh-huh.
like, and going back to what you were saying, because it's that loud, bustling thing. And even for me, like, that was something I didn't realize caused me to get overstimulated until I learned more about my own neurodivergency. And I was kind of like, oh, that starts to make sense. Okay, now I understand why I start to get really frustrated in certain situations, and I don't understand why, or I didn't understand why, but now I just know it's when there's just so much going on.
Yeah.
It's that the visual clutter, the auditory chatter, like sometimes it's just too much for the nervous system. So,
Yeah.
but now I have tools, obviously, that I use to chill out. But it's interesting to see how my kids are so different from each other
Yeah. Yeah.
in that
It's wild.
respect.
It's
Yeah.
that whole nature nurture. Like, how does that apple fall the way it falls?
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. So let's get into what you do on a daily basis as a
Mm-hmm.
coach. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds. It's career day. The kid in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
I help adult women who have ADHD understand how their brain works so that they can start to thrive in their life.
What did you want to be at 12? What was your dream gig?
Oh, I wanted to be an actress or a
Okay.
cheerleader.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah.
So what so are you from Highland? Are you from that area, or from Chicago,
No,
Highland? Okay.
no, I grew up down in Springfield, Illinois.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
and then I moved to Chicago to go to school for theater. And then we moved out to the suburbs about 10 years ago. And so, yeah, that's how I got here.
Could you technically say that you grew up where the Simpsons were, that you grew up with the Simpsons?
I technically, but they've never been clear on which Springfield, because there's a Springfield in every state.
Oh,
So
okay.
we were always like maybe, but then I think there's also, isn't there like a Sherman, Illinois in there, or there's a Sherman town in one of those, because we also have a Sherman that's close to Springfield. I don't know. We always we're like, yeah, it's us, but we have no
Yeah.
idea.
But I thought because of the two stacks that are there in town mimic that plant. So that's why I thought. But anyway,
Yeah.
so I'm curious. Take me back to the beginnings in your childhood. A lot of our personalities are developed by 3 years old. What were the seeds that were planted that allowed you to get to a point where coaching made sense, or you wanted to be an actor, or you eventually figured out that you have ADHD? What were all of those things that have evolved into who you are and finding your place on the planet?
So I don't have super strong childhood memories,
Yeah,
which I later found out is actually kind of an ADHD thing.
yeah,
I didn't have a terrible childhood. I had a great childhood. I had great parents. Even though I'm Gen X, I actually did have parents that paid attention to us. So, I had a good childhood. But I definitely liked being the center of attention when I was really young. And I was told regularly to don't show off, don't do this. And so, like, that inner actress part of me kind of got squelched for a long time,
yeah.
because I was worried that people would think I was showing off, or I was, trying to be too much, because I was told I was too much a lot. So, um, I went to Catholic school. I joke I'm a recovering Catholic. And, all of those things kind of played into that sort of stuff as well. Cause, it's just, there's a lot of guilt that's thrown at you in Catholicism.
Yep.
So, and then when I did when I did eventually go to college, in high school, I had a terrible guidance counselor, Mrs. Larson. And she insisted everybody pick a major. And I'm like, I'm 17 years old. I don't know what the hell I want to do for the rest of my life. I had 1 year of accounting in high school, and I was like, all right, I'll pick that. It was fairly easy. So I was an accounting major for a while, and I went to a junior college. I was supposed to go away, but then my mom got sick. My mom had a brain tumor. So I ended up staying home and went to the community college. It was a 2 year college. I was there for 3 years. And then I took a year off. And before I left there, I said, I'm not doing this for a living. There's just no way. I really want to go to school for theater.
Yeah.
And so I took a year off, saved up some money, sort of, and then moved to Chicago. And that's how the theater thing started. And I did theater for a while. But I realized I didn't love it the
Yeah.
way that I think you need to in order to have it as a real career.
Yeah.
I've had so many careers in my life, like that, and that alone is a sign you have ADHD.
Yeah.
I went to school. I was a clinical massage therapist for 10 years. I had my own clinic. I was a bartender. I was a secretary. I what was one of the other things I did? I worked in direct sales. Like I did all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And um, but oh, and then I was in real estate, which I hated, but it paid really well. So I did that. But
Yeah.
I really just didn't like it. It was so nerve wracking because they scare you to death in school for that. Cause like every little thing you could get sued, it's $25,000 and
Um,
blah, blah, blah. So my over anxious mind was always terrified of missing an I or not crossing a T.
yeah.
Um, And the reason that I kind of got into what I was doing now, I'd already gotten certified as a life coach and I really didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I knew I liked helping people, but I didn't really know what direction I was going in with it. And then when I got my diagnosis, I realized there was nobody out there for me.
Mhm.
Like there was nobody like me now out there for me then. Everybody was geared towards adolescent boys. And so it was really tricky to navigate that by myself through a lot of it.
Yeah.
I did end up finally getting, a coach and a therapist that helped with a lot of it. But I realized I was like, I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get there. I went through a pretty bitter phase after my diagnosis of like, how did nobody see this? My life would have been so different. I would have had, I would have been able to save money and I would have had a better career and like all these things, right?
Yeah.
And I am in a mastermind with two women. And one of the women, when I was having one of these moments during our thing, she said, maybe you had to go through this to prepare yourself for your next chapter. So she knew what I was going to be doing before I did, honestly. And I was just like, yeah, whatever. I wasn't open to that conversation yet.
Yeah. Sure.
Um, but then as I was doing this, I started helping friends who had ADHD, and they were getting they're like, this is really great stuff. And they were really getting, a lot of value out of it. And I thought, okay, maybe this is what I want to do. I was reluctant to because I thought, do I really want to be talking about ADHD 24/7?
Yeah.
But I was like, I live it 24/7. And women were missed so much, like so many people are like, why are so many women finally, or why are so many women suddenly getting diagnosed with ADHD? And I'm like, it's not like they suddenly got it. They always had it, but we were all missed because everybody was looking at boys.
Yeah.
And ours looks different than boys. Our hyperactivity is being chatty or, interrupting people, things like that. It doesn't quite look the same. Boys are very disruptive and that's why they get the attention, whereas
Yeah.
ours, we tend to internalize more. Um, so anyway, so that's kind of how I got into it and I have been loving it.
So who's been your hero? Who's been your inspirational force that's allowed you to get through all of this? Because that's what I kept thinking when you were talking about the diagnosis. Like when Miles got his diagnosis, it was like 18 months. Like there was something up and first steps came in and it was this process. But I've known
Mm-hmm.
other kids where the parents are in denial. no, everything's fine. You know what I'm saying? And then
Yeah.
it's like, God knows when it's going to get figured out. But so getting back to that idea, there had to be strong people. Who was that inspirational, heroic force in your life that's allowed you to get to this point where you are comfortable with where you're at and what you're doing?
So I would say there's two. So my dad, who we now realize probably had ADHD himself, he was also an entrepreneur. And he also took care of my mom when she became disabled. And he just always was optimistic. And he kind of looked at the world through rose colored glasses, but that's what helped him deal with a lot of the stuff he was dealing with. Um, I say fortunately only because I know what COVID would have done to my dad's business. My dad was a jeweler. They passed away before COVID. Uh, but he was always just this very strong force that was like, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah,
And it was always like, I don't care that you're a girl, you can do whatever you want, kind of thing.
yeah,
Um, and the other one would be my husband, who has been extraordinarily patient with every career I have had since I've known him. He's like, "What are we doing this week?" kind of a thing.
yeah.
But this has been really good, and he's been really supportive, um, and it's been helpful for him because he learns a lot from my reels about like he's like, oh, so that's why you guys do this. Okay, now I get it, and so it's I'm very fortunate that I have a husband who is as patient as he is. So
You know, the thing that I think about being in the special needs world for all of it, because Miles is 20 now, all of us fill a role. Like, there's this stigma with things. People have Asperger's or ADHD or whatever. There's this automatic mental thing that goes into
mhm.
people's minds. I don't see it that way because I think we all have these abilities, and I think if we tapped in to what ADHD can do logistically, we would be in a much better place. Like for instance, with Miles, he's social and he can just recognize things. Like he can see like a pair of shoes like a mile away. Like there's things and there's things that
Yes,
like he had a friend when he was going to school that was a savant. He's on the spectrum. She had autism and she could remember everybody's day, the day that somebody's birthday was on a 2 year period. So you would go up and say your birthday and she'd be like, "Dun," boom, in 2 seconds she'd have it out. Those are the kinds of things that if we as society would harness instead of saying, oh, because
yes,
the first thing is, what are you doing for therapies or medicine or whatever? We need to be thinking, so what are you doing? What's going on? Like, how, like for me, I just naturally am like, what you're doing is you're taking what you've lived and you're going to help other people because you know what it's like. There you go.
yeah,
And it's a demographic. You're coming from a perspective of entrepreneurship, which is the golden rule. You're solving a problem.
yeah, yeah. And I completely agree with you with what you're saying about if we could start to instead of a lot of people say, well, why do you need the label of ADHD? And I'm like, well, that label gave me, well, first of all, it answered a whole lot of questions I'd had about my life, but also it gave me access to treatments I would not have
Yep.
otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Two, now that I know what I'm dealing with, I was able to then learn how my brain worked, right? And I could see where my challenges really are, but I could also start to see where my strengths were because there was a while where I didn't think I had any. And when I get new clients, they none of them can give me a strength when they first start with me
Yep.
because they just feel broken a lot of the time. And I've been there. And but what I know is that everybody, I don't care if you have ADHD, autism, or you're neurotypical, everybody learns differently. Everybody's brains process information the way they process information. With ADHD, what I usually say is, while the rest of the world was born with a PC brain, we were born with Macs.
Yep.
But having the Mac brain isn't the problem. The problem is that we were given the PC manual to work with.
Yep.
And so, going back to what you were saying, if we started to look at people so for example, with ADHD, being late is very common, right? Because we have what I call time optimism, which is we think we can fit more into 5 minutes than we actually can. And everything in our mind is 10 minutes away when it's usually 20 or 30. Okay. I'm actually chronically early for everything. So I don't have that, but I'm a rarity. But instead of micromanaging, you're 5 minutes late. Well, if this person's doing really good work and getting it in at the deadline, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Like people don't leave jobs, they leave managers.
Yep.
And if we could start to say, hey, where do you think your strengths are? And if they can say, look, I'm going to be late every day and I'm going to wait to the last minute to do things, but the work I give you is going to be on point and you're never going to regret it, and they prove it, so let them, right? And instead of, there are so many people that I work with that are afraid to tell HR they have ADHD, even though it's covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act. They
Yeah.
can ask for reasonable accommodations, like if they don't have to open the store, maybe they can be late. Who cares if they're
Yeah.
getting their work in? So, and I think that with education, you know, we have this one size fits all education system. And I, in an ideal world, what I would really love to see is a classroom where the teacher, first of all, there's more than one teacher. And also, okay, so for my auditory learners, you're going to do this. For my visual learners, you're going to do this. For my kinesthetic, you know, the doers, you're going to do this, so that they learn the way they learn, right? And even maybe mix it up sometimes. Say,
Hmm.
okay, so my kinesthetic people, we're going to have you try to do it with just auditory,
Uh-huh.
right? Things like that, just so they can start to understand different perspectives, because I think as a society, we have lost the ability to do that as of late. And so I think teaching how kids learn needs to come more into play. I don't know that that will ever happen, but
Yeah.
um, I think that is so important
Yeah.
because, so for example, a lot of times people with ADHD have what's called an auditory processing disorder. And so sometimes we mishear things, or it takes our brain a beat to hear what was said. And so while our brain's doing that, we're missing everything else that's being
Uh-huh.
said. And my daughter, for example, was struggling because she was like, I did not, I write everything down. She's really good about that because she knows if she doesn't write it down, she'll forget it. And she misheard instructions for her class. And so she was like having things coming in late, things like that. She was getting really frustrated because she really wanted to do well. And so when we did her 504, I said, I want to request that she get written instructions in addition to verbal. Because while she writes it down, she sometimes mishears things. And this will
Yep.
benefit everybody in the classroom, let's be honest, because you
Yep.
can't say you didn't know because it's in writing.
Yeah.
And they kind of pushed back on that a little bit. And I was
Uh,
like, no, no, that's not acceptable. That's
yeah.
got to be part of it. And it's helped her a lot.
Yeah.
So I think when we can start to embrace what our challenges are and not see them as character flaws or moral failings, they're just, everybody has them, right? And then lean into the strengths we have. People with ADHD are incredibly creative. And
Sure.
they don't, it doesn't even have to be, you know, artistically.
Right.
We're creative problem solvers
Uh-huh.
because we have to figure out how to not lose things all the time, and, you know, whatever. So when we can start embracing those things, I think it will make workplaces work better,
Hmm.
because we're also, you know, like you mentioned with your son, he can spot things from a mile away, right? And both ADHD and autism, we are really great at pattern recognition. So we can spot, like, if there's a gap somewhere in your business where you're losing customers or whatever, those are the people you want to ask. Like,
Yep.
where am I missing something? Because they're the ones who are going to see it. We're the ones who like will tell you what the end of a movie is before it happens.
Yeah.
So learn letting people grow into jobs where they can really use their strengths and not punish them constantly for the things that you view as a weakness,
Yeah.
I think would make a huge difference just as in the world in general. That's a very long answer. I'm sorry.
No,
I
it's good.
talk.
It's great. It hit a lot of points. I love it. So let me ask you this. When you think about the word retirement, it's this big word in the Hollywood Hills, and it's just glowering at you. What do you think about?
I don't know if I'll ever be able to retire,
Yeah.
but I don't know that I want to be able to obviously enjoy my later years and not have to work all the time. Obviously, I haven't really thought about it too much because,
Okay.
so in ADHD, we have something called time blindness. So there's a few different ways that it shows up, but one of them is we have two modes of time. There's now and there's not now, and not now doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So that is a problem for things like saving for retirement, saving for a house, because that's way down in not now land. My husband and I do talk about it. We have some things in place and all that. So we're not going to be destitute or anything, but thankfully I am married to somebody who does handle a lot more of that stuff than I do, because it is a big challenge. And that's something that I'm always trying to find ways to empower women so that they can feel better financially because it does hit really hard financially because of things like time blindness, which you don't put those two things together usually,
Hmm.
but it does make a big difference. It impacts your health
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, that's down the road. You know, we were
Yeah.
the last minute term paper people, right? Oh, I got 2 weeks. That's plenty of time.
Yeah.
Oh, I have 2 hours. Plenty of time.
Uh-huh.
So
So let me ask you this. If everything that you've accomplished in your life evolved to and figured out, what are you the proudest of?
hmm, I think I am the proudest of the fact that I never gave up
Yeah.
when I was really depressed. Because I had tried to talk to doctors about the ADHD a few times, and I was always told some version of you just have too much on your plate. And then when I got to my early 40s, I just got very depressed. I was like, this, I just thought I would do so much more with my life. I don't understand what's wrong with me. I guess I just don't adult well. And every time I really got sad, I'm like, you just gotta find something else. You don't just don't just quit, right? And we tend to always feel like we just have to work harder, and it's really more just about working smarter, obviously. So, but I'm most proud of the fact that I didn't quit on myself.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I am a stubborn, um, persistent, flawed, optimistic woman who loves her friends and family dearly and just wants to make sure everybody's taken care of.
That's a tweet. That's perfect. That was like the length of a tweet. I love it. So, if you could get into a time machine and either go into the future and see what happens 20 years from now, or go back in time and see one event in human history with your own eyes, won't create a Michael J. Fox tear in time. You get to just watch it. What would you do?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Because so like to go to the future would be fun, but then you can like cause problems with that later when you know how things might turn out.
Biff, that the Biff principle.
Yes. Um, at the same time, I have, in terms of my own life, I have come to a place of peace with a lot of things from my past. But if I could just be a fly on the wall of the past, I would a lot of things in the White House I'd really love to know the truth about. There's a um uh I don't know. That's a really good question.
Yeah.
So many things I would want to do.
It's so weird you mentioned that. I just interviewed a congressman and asked them what it was like to be in the Oval Office literally like 15 minutes ago.
Wow.
He was in there when George H.W. Bush was vice president. He was talking about clipping a mic on him and just how they're human. And it's so interesting you say that. I don't know that I would want to be anywhere around the blue dress incident, but everything else, Nixon fumbling around with the pill bottle and all that, let's go.
Yeah,
So, but
there's just so many like juicy things that we don't
totally.
know about and probably never will, but
Yeah. It's just like the World Series or something like that. There's a very small percentage of humans that land on this blue rock that ever get to experience something that magnanimous. And when you start
yes.
talking about the Oval Office, there's like a 0.0000001 chance that any of us are even going to run into anybody that's been in that position. So it's wild for sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I'm curious with the ADHD brain because I'm sure I have levels of it. Do you take in books better by reading them or listening?
Both at the same time.
Wow.
I love to read, but my mind wanders
Yeah.
constantly. And so even with medication, it's just like I'm like, okay, well, yeah, it's just going to take me 3 years to read this book, I guess. And
Yeah.
then I don't even know what made me try it, but I thought, well, what if I listen to the audiobook while I'm reading the book?
Interesting.
And it did help quite a bit. And I think it's just having multiple sensory things. And then my husband was like, maybe you should like play around, like maybe having like a scented candle or something, like get another sensory thing going on in there. But there is something about doing both together
Interesting.
that is very helpful, or body doubling. So do you know what that is?
No.
Okay, so body doubling is working alongside somebody either in person or virtually. You don't talk to each other, you just do your thing. And there is something about somebody sitting there that gets you to do the thing. It is a weird phenomenon, but it's really effective. And my daughter, at one point last year, she was in accelerated ELA, and she had moved into it from regular ELA the year before. And there was way more reading. And she was really getting frustrated because she's got the same problem I do, is she has to reread something 50 times because she forgets. And so one day she said, "Would you read with me tonight?" And I thought she meant like read to her, like when she was little. And I was like, "Sure." She goes, "No, no, no, just read next to me." And I was like, "Oh, she's been paying attention. Okay." And so I would read next to her, and it also seemed to help. So,
That's interesting because I do that a lot with Miles. He just wants to hang out and just, there's just times where he just wants me to be there when he's doing just certain things. Like there's no interaction. He just wants that. That's interesting. And I didn't know that that was a concept. So, one thing that I want to kind of bring to your attention, there's a podcast called the Telepathy Tapes, and it's about all of these nonverbal autistic kids that cannot communicate other than assisted technologies, but
mm,
they have documented 100% that they can read minds. So the parents can't buy them Christmas gifts because they know what, or if the
get
parents are like,
out.
yeah.
That's
So
crazy.
if the kids are like, hey, do we have any more of those chips left? Because I want some, and the parents want to hoard it and keep it for themselves, they're going to get rooted
Good
out.
luck.
So there's this whole world, but it's called the telepathy tapes. It's fascinating. It's like
I'll have to check that out. That is very cool.
it's like what we've talked about these, harnessing the power of this community of people that have brains that operate differently. And that's what they do. They can read minds. Talk about a superhero capability. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh my gosh. That's incredible. I've never heard of that
yeah,
before. I definitely got to check that out.
check it out for sure. So, speaking of checking it out, if anybody wants to reach out, hire you, any of the good business, where do they go?
So they can go to joriehoulihan.com. That's my website. And I'm also on Instagram, and I have a podcast called ADHD and dot 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 with Jorie Houlihan. And I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on like all the social stuff. So, and my handle for most of them is Jorie Houlihan, no
Okay.
space.
Excellent. Jory, this has been great. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful 2026.
Thank you. And thank you so much. You have asked great questions.
Thank
This
you.
was a lot of fun. So thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
Yeah, you bet. And